What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast, the official podcast of MetalNexus.net, where you can get all your show reviews, concert reviews, and so much more. And with me, as always, is Daniel Terry. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm enjoying the weather out here at good old STL. It's just a giant fucking rain cloud just followed me around all day. And you know what? That was fine, because it's been hot as balls every other day.
It was about 94 out here today, and I worked in it, and I was not looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's not fun. Probably getting in that hot car after being in a grocery store for an hour.
Well, you know, the nice thing is my AC kicks on pretty quickly, and, you know, I wear flip-flops, so I do that dual thing where it's on my face and my feet, so it cools me down pretty quickly.
Oh, you have AC?
Yeah, you know, when you go, $16,000 in debt, I hope you can afford AC on something.
Well, that's true. You do get what you pay for, because, I bought my work truck for like $2,000 from some dude that may or may not have been shady, so, you know, you definitely get what you get.
Right. Speaking of getting what you get, this episode's guest is Will Putney. You know, if you listen to this podcast and you don't know who the fuck Will Putney is,
just stop. You know,
pretty much.
Pull up the Wikipedia, familiarize yourself.
I mean, if you're not familiar with his band, Fit For An Autopsy, they've been around for a while, so I don't know how you haven't heard of them. If you haven't heard of The End, his other band, the supergroup of sorts, they arguably put out one of the most pissed off EPs of the last probably 5 years.
I was very angry.
And if you haven't heard of all the records that Will Putney has produced, well, then I really don't think you like the genre at all. So why are you listening to us right now?
It's for all the beer talk.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I'm drinking a Snapple peach tea. I kind of had a lot of expensive cocktails this weekend, which I posted some of those on our Instagram page. My God, with the heat, there was one I tried. It was a watermelon-infused tequila with some Saint Germain, which has quickly become my new favorite ingredient in cocktails, as one of my bartender friends refers to it as the bartender's ketchup, because it goes good with everything. But basically, it just makes everything taste super sweet. So on a hot day, when you're eating tapas and you want a nice sipping drink that's cool and delicious, that's what you do. You just throw something in with some tequila and Saint Germain and a bunch of other sweet citrusy ingredients and call it a day. But this peach tea makes me feel right at home in the South, which is where I'm not at all.
I was going to say, I'm arguably further south than you are. Not arguably. I think geographically it's sound. But I'm not even the South, really. Now, it's funny, though, because if you drive about 30 miles south of my house, those guys think that they're in Texas.
It's kind of funny. My wife and I, speaking of geography, we were talking about the various dialects and how different everything is per, obviously the East Coast has its own dialect for a specific reason. We were in the original 13 colonies over there, and, the regions of people kind of spread and created their own thing. But it is kind of interesting, Midwest, you don't really get too much different dialect. Maybe here in Michigan, you go up to the UP, which is basically Canada Junior. That has its own dialect, there's its own vernacular and so forth. I would say kind of the South, not so much. It just kind of is a barometer of how southern are you? Are you in the green, or are you in the yellow, or are you in the red?
Yeah.
It's just basically turning up the volume on the southern tinge on it. West Coast, there's a little bit of different variations of dialect out there, but not as drastic as the East Coast. I was, talking with my wife, and I go, you look at New York, you got Staten Island, you got Brooklyn, you got, all these places that kind of have their own tinge. Then you got West Virginia, which has got its own dialect. You got Philadelphia, Jersey, South Philly, everywhere has, Rhode Island, everywhere kind of has its own twist on what English is, or what, how they speak. And it is kind of interesting just to kind of see it. Will and I kind of touched on just the fact that, being from the East Coast, swearing is its own kind of, its own specialty language out there.
It's got its own rhythm, it's just part of the deal. Down here, we always just sound like in St. Louis, we're so Midwest. We've got the TV dialect. So a lot of the time, whenever we say fuck or shit or whatever, we just sound like a 13-year-old kid that just got out of earshot from his parents.
Fair enough. But all of that aside, this was a fun chat. Basically, I've been trying to have Will come on the show for about a year now or so. Basically, since Greg Thomas, ex Misery Signals, but who was on the show from Silver Bullet Studios. Once he had kind of told me, about this new project he was invested in, and who all was involved in it, and having not heard a single note of anything, I went on my way to just slowly collect everybody, and Brandon and Will were the only two I wasn't able to get, obviously, because they're, two of the busiest guys. And so, it was kind of fortuitous when, I get an email from Amy. I was like, hey, would you like to talk to Will about his new plugin software thing? And I was like, absolutely. And then I thought to myself, I don't use plugins, so, I'm going to go hit up Greg real quick and be like, yo, what do you think of this as a producer and just as a musician as a whole? And then I reached out to Andrew from the Ghost Inside, who I've been, kind of sort of being friendly with on Instagram and so forth. I was trying to get him on a while ago when he was doing that one decade side project that he's been doing, but obviously the Ghost Inside stuff has been keeping him busy. They just played their show as of when we're recording this past Saturday. So congrats to the Ghost Inside and all those guys finally making their long waited comeback.
Dude, no joke. They're one of those bands that I was like, man, are they just going to be gone forever? Because there's too many bands that continue on for such a long fucking time that it gets really tired. Slayer, And I love the Ghost Inside from the first note, and I'm really glad to be able to hear some new stuff from them.
Yeah, I don't know if anything new is going to come out of this at all, but I do know that
it'll come.
I'm sure, for sure. But I mean, I don't know if you've seen the videos or the photos from it. I mean, it seemed like pretty much anyone on my Instagram page everyone was there. I mean, even Carl from Ex Misery Signals left, Canada to come down to go see it. But it looked like a fucking festival. Like it looked like there was probably like 8,000 people at this thing. I thought they were playing a club. So I was pleasantly surprised to see it be outdoors and, on a, set up stage. And they had like pyro and, fireworks and confetti cannons and all that shit. Like they definitely didn't skimp out on any of that. It's just been crazy because, Have Heart just did their reunion, couple of reunion shows, and seeing, these hardcore metalcore bands playing in front of arguably almost tens of thousands of people that are there to see them. Really kind of makes me feel pretty good about where the state of heavy music is. And, Will has a pretty big hand in a lot of modern heavy music right now. So, I think that kind of all ties together. But, it's been nice to be a fan of heavy music. Slayer just announced, I don't really give a shit about this, but Slayer just announced, the final leg of their farewell tour with Primus, interestingly enough.
And Phil Anselmo and the Illegals.
Doing a Pantera cover set. So I think you're going to see a lot of diversity out on this last bill. I think it's kind of nice because, Slayer used to go out with a lot of interesting bands, early in their career. So I think it's kind of fitting that, their last tour, at least in the States, they're taking out Primus, which wouldn't seem like it would be a perfect fit, and then Phil, which it's interesting to see Philip H. Anselmo and the Illegals be the opening act on this, but it's kind of nice. They've been paying the homage to the legacy acts and so forth, usually having them play that slot. So it's nice to see that continue on this final leg of the tour. By all accounts, like I said, it looks like metal and hardcore has just been doing really well the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just like a collective society, like if this is how long it's taken society to adjust to the new norm of what metal became when we were younger and just is now. I definitely remember showing stuff like Lamb of God to people years and years and years ago, and it being like, whatever, and then that band will go out and play and sell out an arena. So on a Slayer tour, so it just really kind of blows my mind that like stuff that I used to show people just basically to scare them is now basically like the new norm, and that's cool. That's it's not something I'm upset about or I feel betrayed by. It's really cool to hear bands that I grew up with actually still making a huge dent and people actually giving a shit. And like it's cool just seeing like newer fans of metal, people that maybe cut their teeth on like deathcore stuff and heavier stuff, kind of going back and looking at some of these metalcore bands and kind of looking at them the same way that maybe we used to look at like bands like Megadeth and I almost said Anthrax, but I just can't bring myself. No, but bands like Megadeth or Slayer, or those bands that everybody pretty much, our parents may have told us, or these are the best, or this is the greatest stuff. So, in one way, you can say, oh yeah, it's becoming dad rock, but at the same time, like I'm like, bring it on. Like I'm a dad, I rock. I still enjoy some screams and some breakdowns.
Yeah. No, I think it's been interesting, and then actually, you know what? I'll talk about this in the outro. So, without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Will Putney, and we'll talk to you all afterwards. So I had the pleasure of talking to Will Putney this early afternoon, who just put out his own STL plugins package. You might also know him for being the guitarist in Fit For An Autopsy, or producing arguably most of your favorite metal records over the last handful of years. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, it's actually been a little bit of a long time coming. When I did the end chat, thanks to Greg, kind of spilling the beans about who was in that band before you guys all revealed that, I was slowly trying to collect you all, and you and Brandon were the two that I could not get.
Well, we're probably the busiest, so that makes sense. But yeah, I'm glad we were finally able to work it out for sure.
Kind of speaking to why you're actually on here, you just released the Tonality series of your own with the guitar and bass plugins. How long have you actually been working on making this product?
I did. It's my first software thing I've ever released in that world, and I probably spent over a year on it. We went kind of crazy with it. I never really enjoyed guitar stuff in the plugin world. I just didn't think it held to what I would just do at the studio with amps and stuff, and I got an opportunity to make one on my terms. I was like, all right, well, if we're going to do it, it's got to be something I'd actually use and want to put my name on and stand behind. So we kind of went nuts with it, and just thousands of audio files and testings and breaking down schematics and going back and forth with the design and how it's going to work. It took so long, but it's very, very awesome. I'm really stoked we put that kind of time into it.
Was there ever a point during the process of making this that you were just kind of like, why am I doing this? It's probably not worth it.
Initially, I was like really thinking I might have been wasting my time, like, because I didn't know what it was going to sound like, and I had just I'd never used one of these plugins to get a guitar tone where I was like, man, this thing is awesome. I love this. I can't wait to make a record with this, So off the bat, I thought like, yeah, there's no way this is going to work out. Like, we were initially just going to kind of do one amp and we were going to see where it went. That was kind of how it was left. And I just thought it was going to work itself out where I was going to be like, nah, it's not for me. And I was kind of wasting my time. But STL basically had who I think is the best software engineer in the world for this kind of stuff. And he went really all in on it. And I was just pleasantly surprised to literally just hear my amp in this kind of plug-in form thing. So it was, yeah. I think once that happened and I was able to really hear this thing work the way it was intended to, then I got really excited and no longer felt like any time was being wasted because we had something special.
Kind of going through something like this, which is a different avenue musically as far as like the production side of things. What was one of the biggest adversities that you kind of went through with this?
I think the challenge was just to make sure that this thing worked exactly how it was work in my studio. Yeah, how I would work in real life. There's a lot of detail. It's not just an amp and a cab and a mic that get the guitar sounds that I get. So there's just like a lot of detail to recreate the whole chain, all the different outboard gear that we use, the different summing mixer setup where you're blending mics, and really like having all the details, the small details that add up and translate to like your finished guitar tone. Getting all of that to actually live in a piece of software is pretty tricky. And it's part of why the process took so long, but I think, it was worth putting that kind of time into it. And some of it was like new ground. We didn't really know how this was going to all work. So definitely some trial and error and not being sure, like if we were even going to be able to pull certain things off, but then figuring them out. It was just a whole cumulative process of pushing through it all. But I'm really happy with where it landed and what we were able to do with it.
Does getting the opportunity to do something like this validate your producing career and kind of in a completely different way that maybe album sales and just, the general, oh, this is a Will Putney record, like I'm going to listen to it regardless? Like, does this kind of validate what you've done in a completely different realm?
I mean, I think it's cool. It's very humbling, and just the fact that a company thinks that the sounds I make is worth them putting this amount of time and money into. It definitely was a very rewarding feeling, a little unexpected too, I guess. I had never really thought, I like the records that I make and I put them out there for the world, and kids seem to really like what I do too, but I never really thought I would have been in that kind of situation, so I definitely was surprised, and, it feels cool. I'm not going to lie. It's definitely, I'm just glad people like it. That's all. It felt better when it came out and I saw the responses and I saw actual producers and like younger kids who didn't have access to like all the type of gear that I have and stuff, just being really excited that they can get those kind of tones. Like that was the original intention of this thing, where it's a product that like when I was starting out, I would have killed for, because it would have given me the ability to get ahead so much faster. I would have been able to get these kind of, I wouldn't have had to struggle and save up all this money and buy all this stuff to like get to here. It's just kind of given to you in an easy to use form. And being able to do that was really cool, because it solved a big problem that when I was a kid I would have loved, so that was probably my favorite part of it.
It's kind of interesting. You were talking about, just that when the product was released and seeing, the wealth of people using it, I kind of wanted to hit on that. You had, your end bandmate, Greg Thomas, who is a producer in his own right, kind of utilizing the product. You had someone like Andrew from the Ghost Inside, who was also using it, for a lot of the stuff that he's creating over there for his band. And, it just kind of made me wonder, does having the diversity between producers and, well-known musicians using this product and praising it for how easy it is to use right out of the box, was that really hard to find that balance for both artists and producers, or was it relatively easy to kind of find the balance for the software to kind of meet demands for either one?
Well, I think I've been fortunate enough to record, obviously I work within the confines of metal and hardcore, and I don't do too much out of that world, but I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of different variety of in this work with these types of bands, and going through this and designing it, I wanted to make sure we like kind of covered all those bases. And then it was easy when we had it finished to give it to all types of producers and artists and guys who play completely different music and completely different tunings and work with totally different styles of bands. And the fact that I had a bit of variety in the types of bands I work with definitely made it a broader plugin. I feel like if I was a little more niche or pigeonholed, that it wouldn't have been as cool of a product. I probably wouldn't have even wanted to do it, but I knew I could pull off a good wide range of sounds for people to use.
Yeah. Kind of shifting gears a little bit and kind of talking about production lists that you've had, kind of looking through some of the records, because I was trying to find the entry point of like when you basically had started working on records and to what capacity. And there was a record that jumped out at me because I had no clue that you even did anything on this record. And I had to go back in my vinyl and I tried to find if you were listed in the liner notes for those that, actually buy physical media. And I didn't see anything listed, but did you really work on the What to Do When You're Dead by Armor for Sleep?
I worked on the Armor for Sleep record, Smile for Them. It was the record after that. I had just started working with Machine as he was, I think at the very end of that record. It was one of the last records that he had done right before I came in. And I was like, Machine, who was a record producer, is the guy who I kind of learned from. And, that was my entry point to making records. I started as his intern and then became his engineer and worked with a lot of there was a period there for a couple of years, but I a lot of the bands that he was working with, I was assisting or engineering or helping on and stuff. And that's kind of where I learned how to make records, from shadowing him and seeing what he had done, and then being able to apply it with his bands and with my own bands. That was like the jump off. But yeah, Armor for Sleep was one of the earlier bands that I had actually been able, like, it was one of my earlier engineering gigs for sure, where I just kind of got thrown into the fire by him, and I barely knew what I was doing, and I'm recording this like major label record, with this band that was like a very iconic New Jersey band at the time and stuff. So it was a very high pressure situation at that time. I remember sweating that one, but I think it worked out cool. So,
well, it's just kind of funny because I was going to say, when I saw that per the internet, which, greatly can never be trusted 100%, but it was one of those that I was like, I didn't know that. And I'm usually pretty good about, looking at who does what on what records and so forth. So I was kind of shocked to see that you had done, or supposedly had worked on, that seminal record. And then it was kind of weird because I forget the singer's name off the top of my head, but he was just on Shane Told from Silverstein's podcast, and was talking about all the trials and tribulations of the last record they ended up putting out, and just, the label issues and management kind of going like, hey, we just don't hear the song, and, like scrapping the record and starting all over. And it's like, Jesus Christ. So.
Yeah, it was definitely a hairy time for them. I do remember that was one of my first introductions to how that side of the industry works. That was one of the first probably records I had been a part of where I saw outside parties weigh in. And at that point in my life, I just saw bands went into the studio and did what they wanted, and then somebody put the record out, and then I learned very quickly that is not the case, especially when you're a bigger or more successful band. There's a lot of opinions, but yeah, I mean, that all that stuff early on was, being able to kind of see a window into that world. It definitely gave me different perspectives on how people are going to work, how the business side of it works, and all that time early on was super valuable for me. And I always tell kids, like, who are trying to get into recording and stuff, that is the best way to learn how to make a record. Like, is to find a producer or engineer who you really back and really like what they're doing, and then just try to learn from them, like work with them, clean their toilets and make their coffee, and like do everything, spend as much time as you can there, because it's better than any school or any online instructional thing. Like, that's really the way. And I'm very grateful that I had a chance to do that early on.
Absolutely. I think that's something, in doing this, like, I've made the comment a couple of times more recently in talking with Brandon from Norma Jean, and I was making the comment that, they are at a career where they're 20 some odd years into it. And it's like, when you started, all you wanted to do was just be in a band with your friends and make music that you liked. No one told you that in order to survive, you would have to be a marketing person, a brand manager, a finance person, like all the things that you would have to learn how to do in order to traverse, the music industry. And very much the same. I started this podcast because I wanted to just have interesting conversations with people that I admired. I didn't know that I was going to have to learn how to use different softwares and different kinds of equipment and, all these kind of things. And it's like, I still don't know any of the stuff that I'm doing technically, but I'm learning and thankful to like YouTube and stuff. But I always said that I'm not going to let the passion and the drive to do something slow me down because of not having the fundamental knowledge on how to do something.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Norma Jean too, because we wrapped the Norma Jean record earlier this year, and even though they're actually back to literally just being a band in a room making the type of music that they want, and I think part of them riding their waves that their careers had with like the ups and downs and stuff, and kind of learning from all of that, they're back to what's like important for them and what makes their band cool and special. And the whole marketing, be a brand side of it is like, they've been able to remove that from their music again. And I think they're making better records because of it now. Not that was ever, Norma Jean never really turned themselves into a commercialized commodity in any sense, but it's like, this record was, very artistically satisfying for the guys, and they really got to do what they wanted to do without any kind of outside influence. And it was important for them, that's deep in their career, to be that kind of band, and the record's great because of it. But now they all go put their business and their marketing hats on,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's both. It really is both. Like, it's the best bands in the world are the bands that you never hear about, that are playing to 100 kids a night or less, and they'll just refuse to compromise or be a commodity for anybody, and that's cool. That's like a very satisfying, fun way to create music and not give a shit. Or sorry, I'm cursing. And not care.
You can swear all you want, dude.
Oh, okay. Usually.
No, fuck that, dude. It's not called brutally speaking for no reason.
That's true. It's just New Jersey, man. I curse a lot. I'm sorry.
I'm from the East Coast as well. I mean, granted, I've lived in the Midwest longer than I've been from the East Coast, but still, you get a couple of drinks in me, and the East Coast will come out real fast, especially in the swearing. It's almost like its own language.
Yeah. I've been trying over the years. I've noticed when I travel that I'm a potty mouth, so my apologies to the Wisconsin fans tuned in. But yeah, I mean, that's a great way to be a band, and for a lot of people, it's the only way, And then sometimes that stuff catches fire and it changes and it turns into another type of product for people, and you see that when bands grow. There's going to be this fork in the road where you hit, where it's like, okay, now you have to do this kind of stuff. You want to be this size band, or if we want to get you here, like, we're going to need to do this. And some people ride that wave and are cool with those types of compromises, and they don't care. They're just happy that they have a career making music. I've worked with plenty of bands that know that what they're doing, or what this video is, or what this song and this, we were told we have to do this, so we're just going to do it because it's good. Like, people are cool with it, and that's fine too. As long as guys are happy doing what they do, it's like, it goes both ways. I can see both sides of the fence,
Kind of speaking a little bit too, when I would, like I said, was taking a dive on your production side of your discography, and something I realized, and I don't know if you've noticed this either in what you've put out, a lot of the records, especially recently, that you've touched and produced and so forth, have a really long touring life. Like I'll use Every Time I Die, for example. I think Low Teens just hit the 2-year mark, and they're arguably doing one of the biggest tours on the cycle right now, currently, with Mastodon and Coheed. And looking at some of the other records, like, there's just really seminal records and records that had a really long touring life. And it just kind of made me wonder how much of that success can be credited to you and the time that you spend working on the albums with the bands versus, not, just the material that they're bringing in, in its raw demo form.
I mean, it's a credit to everyone that's involved. Part of ETID's success is very small because of what I did on the record, but part of it is because they're an incredible band and they have a good team and they're a great live band. And, we were able to make a record that was special, and it kind of reignited that band and gave them a nice, full, satisfying touring cycle, And, it's happened a few times where, the bands are 2-3 years since we had worked together, and the offers for tours keep coming, and the band's still growing, and it's like, well, it's still working, it's still going. These opportunities keep coming, keep popping up, and bands just keep staying. They'll just stay on the road if the right opportunity's there. It's cool that I've definitely been fortunate to have a few records that had really good life like that, where where they can go 3 years on an album cycle now, when some people are 2 or less, And then I also have bands that I've worked with, a lot of bands that do really fast album cycles too. Not because the records aren't working, but because it's a great way to capitalize on the heat that your band has. You never get as good of like a bump publicly as when you release new music or you put an album out. All the press covers you. All the kids go back to the pages, like the social stuff just goes again. Like, it's the best, like, marketing tool you have. It's your music, And some bands, like, will get a record, they'll tour really fast, they'll try to write another one quickly and get back in the studio and, like, capitalize on the momentum that they have. So it does work both ways. Like, some of the bands that have grown faster have grown because they've done like 1.5 year album cycles, and then sometimes it's just like a record explodes and everybody wants to take a band on tour and they're just out forever. I think Knock Loose had a really good run off the last record we did, where there was just no place in the world that people didn't want them to go, and no band that didn't want to take them on tour, and the band just grew and grew and grew, and now they're this monster in that scene off of this one full length, and we're probably over 3 years.
Yeah, it was I think it was 3 years when I talked to Brian on that Acacia Strain tour, which I think was one of the first dates of that tour, and we had made the comment that I think the record had just turned 3 at that point. So yeah, I mean 3 years, and I mean they're very much like Eat It in the sense that they just keep going.
Yeah, it's just crazy how much they've done since that record's come out, and how the band's gotten from A to B, And it's like, yeah, sometimes it just works, and you got to roll with it,
Kind of shifting a little bit again more to you in the band realm. We didn't get to talk about End previously when I talked to everybody else, like I had mentioned in the very beginning. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions about that. First of all,
yeah, sure.
Very much like I echoed in the interviews I did with Jay and Brendan and Andrew, Greg and everybody else. But how were you guys able to keep this such a secret in the day and age of everyone in the internet knowing what everyone's doing and piecing everything together? Like, I was pleasantly shocked that you guys are able to not only find time to record everything, but do it in such a manner that no one knew that it was coming until literally you guys put out the first 30-second teaser.
Yeah, I think we didn't talk about it that much, and no one was looking for it. So it wasn't the type of situation where no one would have known it existed if we didn't tell them. So we really just didn't tell a lot of people. We only really told, we didn't publicly announce the band or tell anybody that wasn't just a band friend or someone that our bands collectively work with, that we were doing it, So if you don't exist, no one knows you exist. We didn't have any social pages or anything. We literally just stayed off the internet and stayed quiet about it, and just made a cool record. And then when everything was ready to go, we just put it up, and that was us launching that page and putting that teaser up and having a couple of our bands share it and stuff. That was just literally the first time we ever showed up, So I think part of it was we just didn't tell anybody. It'll definitely work.
It was pretty interesting to see how quickly the internet was able to figure out who was involved in it. I think within, a 30-second teaser, and everyone's like, oh, this is who's in this band. And it was like, shit, that's fast.
Yeah, I was surprised that it came together. Yeah. It was cool. It was nice to see our collective fan bases kind of get stoked on each other and stuff. I always like it when bands from different worlds can come together and make cool products, And I was surprised that people who like my band, people who like Brendan's band, we shared more fans than I thought, and they were excited that we were doing stuff together. And I just think it's cool when the worlds collide like that.
Has the success of From the Unforgiving Arms of God, I mean, I think you guys are on your 6th or 7th pressing of it on vinyl, but has the success of the record itself, or the EP I should say, been a surprise to all of you, or at least you?
Yeah, I didn't think anyone would care the way it does because of how extreme the music is, and how just I call it unlistenable music, how just intense and crazy it was. I just thought it's the stuff we like, and I just wanted to do a band like that with my friends, and didn't really think we would do anything with it. If we were if we play a show, cool, and maybe we'll put it online and we'll see what happens and stuff. And then, yeah, it kind of snowballed. It's not a huge thing by any means, but it was cool to see people from all over the place into it. I was just surprised they got around as much as it did, I guess.
I think your set that was live streamed via, was it Revolver, the St. Vitus set?
Oh, Kerrang! Yeah, Kerrang!
Yeah. I think there would be days in the summer when I used to work for a screen printing shop in the shipping and receiving area. I would just throw that live set on just because I was angry that I had to work unpacking 4,000 hoodies in the middle of summer. So it was the perfect soundtrack, and I would just be again. So it's probably my favorite live set that I've seen anyone do through that series. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I didn't think that there was a way to be heavier than the record, but somehow you guys achieved that evening.
Yeah, much appreciated. Yeah, that was a fun show. Yeah, thank you. Big thanks for Hopeswell for having us on that one. That was cool.
Yeah. Is there a follow-up already working? I mean, at this point, it's been almost 2 years now, I think, since the EP came out, so it would seem feasible that there's some new tunes in the works at this point.
Yeah, there's stuff. We're I don't know how much I want to get into it, but we're sitting on some really, really good stuff right now, and soon we'll have some movement in that world again. But yes, we did go back in once we realized people actually kind of are into it and stuff, and I'll say try harder than we did originally, because to be honest, that end record came together super fast. I think between me and Greg, I don't know how much time Greg spent on actually putting his contributions together for it, but I know mine was days, a few days. And then us getting together and actually recording and stuff was very, very quick, especially compared to how I normally would make a record and stuff. We really threw that one together fast. It's part of why it's cool too, but it's also now knowing people are interested in the band, it kind of motivated me to apply myself more and try okay, it's for real now, so let's do it for real. And we definitely put a lot more into what's coming, and I'm really excited about it. I think it blows away what we had done previously. So if you like the band, you'll be in for a treat soon.
Awesome. And then it's also been 2 years since The Great Collapse came out, so do we have some new Fit for an Autopsy stuff coming soon too as well? I mean, I know they're on the road, I think right now, getting ready to do a European run, I think.
They just finished the European headliner. It was excellent. Probably one of the best tours we've ever done just on our own. And we are done with our album cycle for the last record for sure. A couple dates in Mexico, and then there's going to be a lot of announcements for the band very soon. But we've got a record ready to go, and I'm really stoked on it. And towards the back half of the year, you'll see a ton of stuff from us for sure.
What kind of in wrapping up, what does the rest of 2019 kind of hold for you? It seems like you probably are sitting on a bunch of records that either you produced or whatever, and just kind of waiting for the this last quarter or so of the year to kind of release it all.
Yeah, there's always this early year rush where from January to now, basically, I just work nonstop. I think I've had 2 days off this year, and the rest of the year has been spent making a tremendous amount of records. But there's a lot of the bands I've worked with in the past have been back through and have made new records, and we're sitting on a lot of really good stuff right now that will show up in the fall. The end of the year is going to be awesome. There's just so much cool music coming out of here. I'm very excited for it all to get going.
And then where can everyone find you online? I mean, I know you don't really use any of your socials, as I kind of figured out.
I'm there. I'm on Instagram as Will Putney and Facebook if you want to message me there. But graphicnature.com is where I keep all my info and studio stuff and links to what I do with the label. And there's info on the plugin there. You can go to stltones.com and get a full rundown of all the plugin stuff we were talking about earlier in the podcast. And that's pretty much it. I'm pretty accessible, actually.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. Was very much looking forward to this one, and I think we covered quite a bit. Is there anything else you want to mention or anything?
No, I think that's it. I just appreciate people wanting to know about me, so it's very cool. I thank you again for chatting with me.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks again. So that was my conversation with Will Putney of Fit for an Autopsy and Graphic Nature Recording and Audio. That was a lot of fun. I kind of pulled it to me lately when I get somebody. I know that they're on to talk about the thing, and this is, his Will Putney signature guitar and bass plugins for STL Tonality series. But something I've admired about a lot of other people and get jealous of is when someone comes on to talk about something, like when we had Chuck Billy of Testament and we had to talk about vape pens and marijuana vapes things or whatever. And, I remember sitting there telling Dan, I was like, everyone's going to ask about the Slayer tour. Let's go all out on this line of vape products, and let's take the whole half hour we have, or 25 minutes, and make it solely about that, because that's more challenging. And I do still feel that way about a lot of the stuff that we do when we get someone to actually plug something. But I think there's something to be said about plugging the thing for a little bit and then just going off on side tangents and having more of a conversation about a wider spectrum of things as a whole. So with that being said, because I doubt you use the plugins either over on your end, Dan. What did you think of that kind of far-reaching conversation about a shitload of things?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't play instruments, so there's that. But I enjoyed that the conversation was more diverse because I can't stand gear talk for the most part because I'm not like a smart person. I judge music because I don't play music very well. That makes sense, right? So yeah, I enjoyed that there was a little bit more of a wide variety in this case. But I agree with you. The Chuck Billy Testament vape pen discussion was a huge challenge for me because I'm a massive Testament fan, and I was like, okay, let's keep it about the pens, Dan. Let's talk about the vape pens. And I did as well as I could on that. But the Will Putney one, it actually is really funny because I remember you telling me that you were interviewing Will Putney, and I didn't know when you were going to do it. And it was like literally as soon as I was about to text you and ask you when the interview was to see if I could be on it, and I had missed it by like 3 hours. I was bummed out. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to make it anyway, but it was just one of those like, oh man. I've got so many producer questions because whenever we get somebody on that's a producer, you know, as well as a notable musician, it's really hard not to ask those questions. Who was the shittiest band that you ever had to work with? You know, and I know they wouldn't even tell me that, but like, you know, or they'd give me like very vague answer, but yeah, like I enjoyed that there was a wide variety of topics, and we talked about, or you guys talked about, you know, his bands that aren't as maybe as well known yet, and so yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I unfortunately missed Fit for an Autopsy recently when they came to St. Louis, much to the chagrin of my friend Chris McCoy, who was sending me messages like all night. He literally was just posting pictures of the show over and over and over again, and I was like, dude, I fucking get it, I wasn't there.
No, I think, you know, for me, I realized, like, the one thing, because, like, I mean, Will's done, so, like I said, like, Will has become kind of the Adam D of the new modern metal production. Him and DL, I would say, are really, like, the two that are kind of, like, putting their stamp on newer metal from a production standpoint. And it's one of those things that I completely, like, as soon as I got off the phone with him, I was like, fuck, I forgot to ask about body count.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I know he's doing the new body count. I know he did the last one. And I think he did the one before that, too. And it's just like, you know, getting to work with Ice-T, getting to kind of help bring this band back from a long, long hiatus. We touched a little bit on Norma Jean. Actually, something that was pretty cool to me to kind of learn about, because I kept seeing it pop up on Wikipedia, and like it was kind of omnipresent in my podcast listening, was the Armor for Sleep thing, because Shane Told had just, you know, I love that. I didn't like the band initially, like when they first came out, and then it was in Dating My Wife that she kind of had been playing What to Do When You're Dead, and I was like, man, there's some like really good production on this. Like the guitar riffs are sick. Like there's just like really good songs on this record.
Dude, it's a fucking great record,
and so much so that I bought it on vinyl. And it's one of those things I kept seeing on. After listening to that Shane Told thing, I was listening to that record a bunch more. And I was looking at Wikipedia or whatever, which, I mean, you should never trust it, but it said that Will Putney had worked on it, and I was like, what? So then I went back to my vinyl, tried to find, like, the liner notes, and I was like, I don't see Will Putney's name on this anywhere. And so it was just, like, one of those where I was like, all right, what did you do on this record? Because, like, that would be so out of your normal range of, like, what he does. But it would be really cool to be like, oh, so like this is one of the first records he worked on. But I almost like the story more of like that he worked on the record that basically tanked the band's career. And like, yeah. Because if you listen to that Lead Singer Syndrome podcast, they talked about how stressful it was to write that record because a major label was involved, and they were like, no, we don't hear the song. We don't hear the song. We don't hear a theme yet, you know. And it was just what drove the band to kind of put out a shit record and to, you know, collapse basically. And the fact that they were talking about how there's, I can't remember if he said there's the original record that they wanted to write, or if there were two versions of the various records that they wrote between, you know, all the pre-pro and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, I'd almost like to hear what that unreleased record would be. It's almost gonna, like, I guess it's almost like the Deftones Euros record at this point. Like, I wonder what the true follow-up to What to Do When You're Dead would have sounded like, especially with Will maybe getting to work on that, since he did work on those pre-production things. But you know, I do find it interesting. You know, we talked about it a little bit with Michael Beinhorn. We've talked about it with Evitz. And it's one of those things where, you know, when you're a producer, you're supposed to try to get the best out of everybody, try to make it sound as great as you can. But then there's that variable, and I know you've talked about it quite a bit on discography discussion, where people are like, but then the label comes in and is like, sorry, we don't hear the song. Like, coincidentally enough, you guys just did Death Angel. That was the newest episode you released. Josta just happened to have the singer of Death Angel on, and they were talking about, I believe it was 3, and they were talking about how the label was just like, oh, we don't hear the record yet. We don't hear the song, like, to start the direction of the record. So they wrote a bullshit song about the manager or whatever, and he's like, I like this. Like, let's keep going down this record. And they're like, dude, it's about you. Like, we wrote a bullshit, stupid song about you.
Yeah, that's it. I really wish I'd have had that insight, too, before we did that episode, because that would have been a funny story to relate. And, yeah, it's like the record label comes in, and they're like, well, we don't hear the song. Dude, you're talking about, like, 3 by Death Angel. Like, it's, like, one of the greatest fucking thrash metal releases ever. And you don't hear the fucking song? Like, get a new job. What the actual fuck? Yeah, sorry. I just had to get off. Death Angel's just... I'm coming off of all of that and actually being a bigger fan of that band than I was before we did that episode. And it's just... Oh, my God. Yeah, like... But like, yeah, to your point, you know, like... We actually, whenever I talked to Toby Wright back at the Rockin' Pod Expo last year, you know, it was kind of the same thing where, like, he's doing his thing, but then he also has to somehow, like, he's almost the middleman to the label, to the guys in suits or whatever, and he's like, yeah, we got a great record here, but then at the same time, you know, they're like, well, we don't hear it. They need to demo out, you know, 6 different songs. It's like, fuck, dude. Like for me, like, as small of a music career as I've had, like, the idea of writing, like, 10 songs or 15 songs, like, and then picking the best 10 or 12 out of that is, like, kind of like the best I could do, you know? So, like, I hear about these bands that just sat in the studio, languished in the studio for months and months and months, and sometimes years, trying to come up with, like, that hit, and they may have demoed out, like 50 or 60 songs or some shit, and I'm just like, at what point do you have to just step in as, like, the music connoisseur that you are, like somebody like a Will Putney that, like, knows his shit, you know? At what point does his opinion need to start, like, mattering more than what the label, you know, is going to think about it?
I think the thing when looking at Will's discography leading up to this conversation that really struck me, though, is just the fact that a lot of bands, and I mean, granted, I'm going to pull this right out the gate. I mean, Eated, they just, as of when we're recording, they just announced another European run. And I mean, we're going into, potentially by the time they're all done with the touring that they have on the books, it'll have been almost 3 years since Low Teens have come out, which is arguably like the longest touring cycle they've done behind a record. And honestly, I still feel like, I mean, especially after this Mastodon run they just did, I feel like they're still, like, in the middle of a tour cycle, of an album cycle. And it's really weird to see that, especially with a band that's, you know, 8 records in, 20 years into a career. Like, this is the record that's had the most life for them. And it's like, Jesus. And Will has done that quite a bit recently, like, bands touring on an album for about 3 years, and you're just like, well, shit, like, is it you?
Yeah, that is interesting.
I mean, Knocked Loose is the other one that I mentioned too, but I mean, Knocked Loose is, like, almost like E-Tid-esque, where it's like, I mean, we talked to Brian in the middle of the new tour they were starting at the time, and they had just put out Mistakes Like Fractures the day before we talked to him, so it was like, okay, so you got new music, and then it's like a few weeks later after we did that episode, or dropped the episode, oh, here's our new record coming out, and it's like, you guys are doing it in a way I haven't seen in a long time, where it's like, we're just going to tour relentlessly with no break, and then in the weird pockets of time that we have, we're going to record a record somehow, and then we're just going to keep touring. Which I don't know if that's going to burn them the fuck out and make them go away, or if it's just going to strengthen them and make them grow to be the hugest band ever.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's it's the second option, but you know, I think burnout is a very real thing. But you know, if you believe in what you've made, you know, if you believe in the if you believe in your record, and you believe that, you know, it's good enough to tour for that long, and people are still fucking eating it up, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Well, I think it's kind of like what Brandon from Atreyu was saying in our episode that we just dropped recently, where he was saying sometimes you got to know when you need to fucking go. When you have the thing and you got to put that dynamite to your ass and just get fucking shot into the stratosphere, that you got to know when that time is and just fucking hit it. Because if you don't, that opportunity might go away and never come back. I mean, look at Death Angel, kind of going back to that. They had a couple of opportunities that unfortunately got squandered, and then in listening to, I can't remember the guy's name, but the singer talk on Josh's show about, basically it was the label thing kind of pissing him off, and then it was the van, the bus accident, and then it was just like, this isn't worth it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it sucks. Man, sorry, I didn't think we were going to have so much Death Angel talk. I'm going to try to keep that down because I did that already this week.
No, I know. It's been fresh in my head because I just got done listening to your discography discussion and then immediately went into the Josta show thing. So it's been...
I still need to listen to that. And again, I really wish that had dropped before we did the episode, but we did that episode like 3. Full disclosure, like on that podcast, we do the episodes like 3 or 4 weeks before they post.
It's kind of like
these. Yeah, actually, that's very accurate. Your favorite podcast is never usually as up to date as they say they are.
Except Talk to Me.
Talk to Me, man. I don't know how he does it, dude. Like he always at the end of the day just comes through with something. That's pretty cool. So he can make fun of me all he wants about being the metalcore guy, but I'm fucking prepared as shit for these things.
And then wrapping up as we always do, time for the plugs. If you would like to keep up with Will, you can find him on Instagram and Twitter at Will Putney. Simple enough. If you would like to keep up with Fit For An Autopsy, you can find them on Facebook at Fit For An Autopsy Official. Instagram and Twitter are simply Fit For An Autopsy. And if you would like to keep up with End, which you should, because hint, hint, sounds like some new shit's about to drop, go to Facebook at Listen to End, Instagram at Your Fucking End, and Twitter at End Band. And, check out that St. Vitus set. It is lean and mean, and I know Dan actually and I have talked about that set quite a bit because it was the Hopes Fall show that they were on, and we talked about how much cleaner End sounded over Hopes Fall on that recording, even though it was the same room, same everything.
Oh, agreed. And it's so funny, too. You're going to see a Hopes Fall show, and you're like, who's this band opening up? And then they're like, literally the most brutal fucking thing that you've ever heard. That just blew my mind, dude. Like, watching that, I was like, holy shit. It almost doesn't even fit. Like, oh, fuck, Hopes Fall's going on after this?
Good luck.
And, like, I love Hopes Fall, but, like, that was not their best performance live. No offense to them. I think they were still getting back into it.
Well, I think the other thing, too, is, like, because one of the other bands that we've had on, and hopefully we can get back on here pretty soon since they got a new EP that's dropped, I think, already, that was on one of those shows, is Violent Life, Violent Death.
Oh my god, those guys are the fucking money, dude. I love that band. Oh my god, you don't hear very many new bands do that. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. That vocal style.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but like the Zao snarl.
Can you hear the grin on Dan's face? Because I'm looking at it.
Oh my god, dude, that band is tits. Like Feel free to edit that out, but nope. I don't care. Like, Violent Life, Violent Death, they're my shit. And what's funny, too, is that when Toomey interviewed them, he immediately texted me and goes, hey, just so you know, this is your new favorite band. And he was not wrong. They're a fantastic band that, if you haven't heard Violent Life, Violent Death, you need to fucking check that shit out. And you know that if I thought something sucked, I would tell you. So... I'm telling you the truth here. This is some straight up like Dan Terry shit. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, it was good having Joe and the guys on a while back. Actually, everyone we've talked about, we've had on the podcast, so you can go back and listen to our interview with Adam Morgan of Hopes Fall, which maybe we need to have him back on for this upcoming release.
Yeah, dude, I'm stoked that they've got the Satellite Years shit, dude. You're just bringing up all this shit that I'm super stoked about. They've got the Satellite Years lineup, and that's not necessarily saying that the album's going to sound like the Satellite Years. I mean, I want that, but I also don't want that. I don't know how to feel. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I might pee a little bit. I don't know. It's going to be great.
Yeah, but we got a lot of great episodes in the back catalog, which brings us back to us If you'd like to keep up with us, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at BrewSpeakPod. Head over to our YouTube channel where you'll see some of the interviews we've done in person. We got a couple more that are going to be posted here pretty soon. So go over to YouTube, look for us at BREWtally Speaking Podcast or BrewSpeakPod over there. If you would like to email us, you can do such at BREWtallySpeaking@gmail.com. If you'd like to keep up with Metal Nexus, you can find them at MetalNexus.net, Facebook at Metal Nexus, Instagram at Metal.Nexus, and Twitter at Metal_Nexus. And Dan, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook under Daniel Terry. You can find me on Twitter at DiscussMetalDan. And if you want to send me a fucking email, go right the fuck ahead. It is at discussmetaldan@gmail.com. It's a special email address I set up, mainly just so that I can sign up for coupons for free stuff and free trials and shit. But you can absolutely send me an email there, and I will get it, and I'll respond to it. I promise I will. Probably.
If you would like to keep up with our sponsor, The Bean Bastard, you can head over to thebeanbastard.com. Get you some delicious coffee, get you a body scrub, get you a candle. There is so much stuff. And as of earlier this week, apparently they are going to start doing deliveries in the Buffalo area. So if you live in the Buffalo, New York area, head on over to their website and set you up a delivery service and get you some delicious coffee. Maybe I'll have to hit up Maruso and maybe we'll have to do a Brewtally Speaking roast.
I'm still waiting for my fucking Bean Bastard coffee.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I gave that away to bands.
You bitch.
I'll get some more. Soon. I need to get some anyway on myself. And if you would like to keep up with them on Facebook and Instagram, just look up The Bean Bastard. And if you would like to support us monetarily, you can always check out our Patreon episode, patreon.com/BrewSpeakPod. We're going to get into the habit of getting some more episodes cranked out here in the next week or so. So if you would like to donate, there are plenty of tiers. Starts at $1, gets you those bonus episodes. Goes all the way up to $75, gets you a bunch of Brewtally Speaking swag that even we don't have currently, but we'll get it out to you. And for the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, I am John.
And I'm Dan.
And we will talk to you all next time.